Well, welcome to another session of Dynamics NAV training. Today's session will cover the basics and best practices for purchase order entry. Things we're going to cover today: an overview of the form, both the role center for a purchasing agent, as well as the basic purchase order entry screen. We'll look at using number series, what's a buy from, a pay to, and an order address. We'll look at how currency plays a role on the purchase order process and how we can manipulate the dollar values or currency exchange rate on a purchase order by purchase order basis. We'll take a look at item availability, vendor item part numbers. We'll examine how extended text can be used on POs for entering multi-line text that is specific for purchase orders. What are line comments on POs and how do I use them? What about the note field? What if I have to enter specific notes about a PO? Standard text codes, which are standard multi-line text data fields. We'll talk about how to use those. We'll go over warehouse management considerations, bin locations, directing put away of where product belongs in a warehouse. So on a PO, we're going to first cover the number series, where we can have vendor or user specific ranges. Maybe a purchasing agent in your company, if you have 2 or 3 of them, have different ranges of numbers. Or if we want to segregate trade payables versus other business related payables and purchase orders associated with them. We can also specify date specific range automation. And we'll talk about the buy from, pay to, and multiple vendor order addresses. So in Dynamics NAV 2009 R2, I have assigned myself the default role of a purchasing agent. So you'll see the information that's key is defaulted on the screen. I've got my navigation pane for my role center with POs, quotes, blankets, purchase invoices, return orders. You'll notice that purchase orders can be expanded, where the system will automatically filter the lists that are displayed. Which orders are pending confirmation? Which orders have been partially received? Which POs are waiting to send or confirm? Upcoming orders, orders that are not supposed to arrive yet. Outstanding POs, not yet invoiced but have been received. Partially invoiced. So a quick way to help us navigating the existing data in the system. Purchase quotes, blankets, invoices, sales orders, vendors, items. If there, as a purchasing agent, if there are key vendors that I manage or deal with, I can have my vendors on a specific list on my role center. I can also have the key items that I'm managing directly on my own role center, my item list. From an activities perspective, the activity stacks that display, there are 8 items to send or confirm. There are no upcoming orders. Creating a new PO can be from a single click on this radio button on the activity panel. Post-arrival follow-up, outstanding POs, purchase return orders, and then purchase orders that are waiting to be authorized for payment that have not yet been invoiced or that are partially invoiced. We can also look at the specific purchasing agent actions, quote, invoice, order, return, certain tasks like accessing a purchase journal or using the item journal for making inventory adjustments, order planning, the requisition worksheet. These are tools to look at inventory demand and availability to help us create purchase orders. We'll go into those features at a future date or another session. The reports that would be important to a purchasing agent: top vendors, vendor item statistics, availability projection, PO status, vendor purchases by item, an item cost and price list, kit component statistics and kit availability, outstanding order stats by PO, a PO aging, PO status report, and a purchase advice or recommendation report. So let's go look at a purchase order. We'll just click New PO to create a new one, and the system will bring up the empty purchase order screen where I can go into this page and start entering data. The first field considered is the number, and by clicking on the Assist Edit Ellipse button, the system will illustrate for me any number series that exist for POs. In this demonstration company, I have a single purchase order number series, which is most common, but I could have multiple number series established, perhaps for trade payables versus non-trade payables, my utilities and so forth, or just business expenses. I could have these set with a series relationship that establishes numbers to be issued associated with an specific time. So if I wanted to go through and look at the actual related information and look at the series lines, I can establish the starting date and new numbers to be issued for different time periods out into the future. By using series relationships, I can establish links from this number series to other number series, which is how I bring multiple series onto the screen. Just a note on number series, if you are using the requisition worksheet to generate purchase orders, multiple number series will cause you some challenges, and it's recommended to just have a single number series. So I simply press the Enter key or the Tab key, and the system will issue the next number series number for my PO. I can now utilize and use the automatic or quick find functions. Who am I buying this product from? And I'm buying it from, and I'll just start typing. And once you start typing data, the system automatically goes into a find feature where it searches your data. It's searching based on the number field. I'd like to search on name. So I click name, and the system automatically will now sort and search based on the name column for this one list. If I say set that as my default, now the system will remember that I always want to search based on name. So we'll go ahead and I will select that vendor, and the system fills in the key details associated with this PO. It brings up my vendor statistics in the fact box to the right. It brings up vendor history where I can see, show me, oh, I have 2 orders in the system right now. I have 1 invoice in the system. I can look at posted invoices, posted receipts, and drill down and examine what have I purchased from that supplier previously. I can go ahead and scroll down through the fast tabs on this PO, and I can see the buy from vendor is the vendor I just selected. If I expand the invoicing tab, I can see the pay to vendor. That pay to vendor is defaulted based on the actual vendor card or the master record. So if I am paying to a master vendor or an additional vendor record, I can go ahead and select that. Now I can look at the ship to data, and the ship to information is established based on my ship to warehouse code where I'm bringing the product in. And I can expand this to illustrate more data. I can show fewer fields, or I can simply collapse this bar and key information is promoted, if selected, to the title bar of the fast tab. So for example, on my invoicing fast tab, if I was to collapse this fast tab, invoicing, you'll notice that it promotes the pay to vendor number, it promotes the payment terms, and it also promotes the due date. So this type of information will automatically be promoted to the fast tab bar. If we wanted to modify the ship to address information, we can key in a new one on the Shipping Fast tab on the purchase order. If we are posting a transaction to a vendor that has a foreign currency, it is critical that we have a posting date in, a default order date, which is a posting date, on the purchase order header. There is a setup option that will allow us to have a blank date when entering an order, and we don't want to have that selected if we deal with vendors in foreign currency. As soon as you select the vendor on that purchase order, it brings in from the vendor card on the Foreign Trade tab the currency code, and it attempts to do a calculation of the rate. Now, this is based on the date on the header. So if that date is blank and we select the vendor, the system will give you an error. So we'll have to put in the date first. And typically the best way is to just have it default to today's date. Then be very conscious of that date when you actually go through the invoicing task. When we select a currency code manually, or if it's defaulted, the system will automatically go through and calculate the exchange rate based on the most recent rate in the table for the applicable posting date. If we can click on the Assist Edit button, you'll notice that the system is bringing up the exchange rate amounts, and it allows us to key in the relational exchange rate amount as an override to the standard rate that's established on this transaction. So in this example, it's saying that €1, the exchange rate amount, euro is 1, equals 1.237 US dollars. And we can change that and say it's 1.45005, or whatever the applicable rate is, and the system will now calculate using that specific spot rate that I keyed in. Let's enter a line item, and then we're going to take a look at item availability. And there's a couple of forms that are wonderful when examining item availability. One of those is item availability by period, where we can look at daily, weekly, monthly availability projection for a product. Item availability by location assists us in determining stock location availability in different warehouses. Those warehouses may be actual physical warehouses or potentially virtual locations that might be in your main warehouse location as a way to segregate your stock. Vendor item numbers are also available in the system, and we'll take a look at those as well. So on a line item, let's take a look at an item. And you notice on the PO your lines can be blank, which are standard text codes, GL accounts, items, fixed assets, where we can actually purchase and record acquisition or maintenance cost entries on purchase orders, or charges, which would be used for landed costs that we want to allocate back to the value of inventory. So we'll select an item, and we'll go ahead and we're going to purchase some 19, and as I start typing, it brings up my list, some 1920S, and the system brings in my description, the default location code for this specific vendor, which it doesn't have one, so I'll go ahead and I'll say we're buying these for the blue warehouse. And now how many of these? Well, in order to determine that, so perhaps I'm using a report to plan on availability. In this example, we're going to look at the purchase advice report, and I'm going to just look for all products, and we'll go ahead and preview this report, which displays for us a recommendation about what products I should buy. Looking through my inventory, the quantity on hand, what's on sales order, what's on back order, what's the quantity on POs already, to drive out what's my actual available quantity. My reorder point, if I've set one, my reorder quantity, if I've set one, maximum average daily usage of this product, and then reorder triggers that recommend how much of this product should I buy. So I can still make the human decisions of, for this product, the hard disk drive, the system is recommending that I purchase 50 pieces. So in this example, we're going to buy 5 of these items for the blue warehouse. As I scroll across on the line, you'll notice I can see my unit of measure, my direct unit cost, my tax group code. The fields that are displayed are quite useful, and you can determine which fields you want to have displayed or that you do not want displayed. One feature that's wonderful in the Role Center or the Role Tailored Client page is our ability to create a freeze panel. If I simply right-click and say Choose Columns, I can insert, right after the description field, a freeze pane. And when the form is now displayed, if I scroll to the right, you'll notice that my item number, and description stay on the screen, making it very easy for me to scroll and determine which lines am I looking at in a multi-order line situation. When looking at the 1920S, I can examine line item availability by period, by variant, which might be color or size or perhaps a set of options or features, or by location. So let's look by period. And by period, I can determine my available quantity, my expected and projected available balance by quarter. I could flip this to monthly availability. I could flip it to weekly. What's on hand, what's on sales order, what's on PO, what's expected, and what's my available balance. And the available balance permits me to drill down and see what makes up that quantity. If there were sales orders or purchase orders, I can even drill further into each entry to determine specifically what makes up that quantity on hand. Line item availability by location displays for us what's our stock situation associated with multiple warehouses. The blue warehouse, the green warehouse, the red warehouse, silver. I can look at availability, what's planned to come in, what's the gross requirement. For this item, the Antwerp conference table, perhaps I want to determine, associated with this item, how does the vendor identify that part number? In order to examine that information, we'll click on the item number, we'll go to Advanced, and I can look at related information. I can go to the item cross-reference table as an option, and I can establish vendor-specific, customer-specific, or UPC-style barcode identifications that relate to this item. We can also go directly to the item card or item page, and when I'm on that page, by choosing Edit, if I take a look at the Replenishment Fast tab, I can see that this is purchased typically from vendor 20,000 via vendor or vendor item number 20122. That gives us the ability to go through and examine or print this information directly on purchase documents. On a PO, if I have an interest in printing or listing and displaying on the purchase order specific text details for the supplier about the product, I would use something called extended text. Let's set up some extended text on this item. So from the item, we'll go ahead to Advanced, we'll go to Related Information, and I'll go to Item, Extended Text. Now under Extended Text, I can create a new text record, and I can illustrate it will work for all languages. The text I want to display. This conference table should be finished with So I've entered 3 lines of extended text. I don't want that text to be displayed on sales documents. However, I want that displayed on purchase documents. So I've turned that on, as is the default, and I'll push OK. So now, when I enter this, I'm going to go ahead and clear this line, and I'm going to enter that same item again, 1920S. Now, the system didn't do anything with that extended text. I have the ability to say, function, insert extended text, and it brings that text in. That was assigned specifically to the PO. The nice or most effective part of the extended text is that if I delete this line, the text is dropped off with that line. So if I'm creating a purchase order document or a put away type document and I only have text relating to that line, the extended text is associated with the line. If I wanted that extended text to be automatically issued and entered every time I process a transaction, we would go to the item and I would turn on that item, if we go ahead and go to edit the item itself, automatic extended text on our general fast tab. By turning that on, now that's set up so when I choose 1920S in the future, it automatically injects my unique extended text lines, creating a more accurate purchase order with the specific instructions for my supplier. The blue warehouse, 5 pieces. There are other ways to record detailed information or notes associated with purchase orders or PO lines. Line comments are available on each purchase order line, where we can enter internal comments, specifications, or details relating to that specific PO line. The best practice is to utilize these line comments for internal notes. If we want those internal notes to be more visible and they are not attributed to a specific line, but more related to the entire purchase order, such as a project comment, we would use the notes function. Line comments are accessible by choosing the action bar bolt and then line comments. And line comments allow us to put in internal comments So those comments are only internal and will not be utilized outside of our system. So those line comments now live on this specific line. I can also include them in emails if we are utilizing the ISV Lanham & Associates email solution. You'll notice on the fact boxes to the right, I have a notes fact box. In this instance, I want to create a note and send it to the purchase receiving department to be careful in inspecting these when they arrive. So we're going to put in enter a new note. Prior to receiving. And who am I going to send this to? And I would send this to the person that's responsible for receiving in my organization. And I'm going to tell it to notify that person. And I save it. And now this note is sent from myself to myself. I try not to talk to myself, but the system will now ensure correct allocation of that product as well as an enforced inspection prior to receiving based on the note that was sent. This note will be visible on purchase orders as well as from the purchase order list. If we utilize warehouse management functionality, when the product is received, we will create a warehouse receipt advice where the product will need to be put away into a specific bin, either system or user directed, and the receipt will be registered. If we are not using warehouse management, a receiver can simply be posted directly against the purchase order document. If we are required to prepay this vendor, we can go ahead and establish the rules on the vendor for prepayment. In this example, we don't have a prepayment percentage required. But if this vendor required us to put a 50% prepayment in, the system will carry that prepayment amount to the lines and allow us to go through, and when we run through the functions, there is the ability to go through and post a prepayment invoice so that we have something to post payment against. Normally, previous to NAV support of prepayment functionality, we would post a payment to the vendor and leave it on the vendor's account. This functionality provides a more controlled approach to posting an invoice against a purchase order prior to receiving merchandise and to have something to pay when we go through and run through a normal payment journal to suggest vendor payment application. The system also supports an approval mechanism. Approvals can be established with approval limits for purchasers that are authorized to buy product with specific dollar amounts. I have access in the system to simply release this purchase order, where the system will go through and process. Now this order is released. It happens to be pending a prepayment because we've put in a prepayment dollar value, but it would go through and automatically release upon prepayment. If, however, I wasn't authorized to purchase a purchase order that was, and I'll click the statistics function, $2,527, if my approval limit was only $2,000, the system would tell me that approval is required. With approvals, we simply go through and we run through the function to send an approval request. Sending an approval request will automatically create a task associated with approval, and once it is approved, then the order will go to a released status. In most environments, purchase orders won't be keyed in one by one by one. We'll utilize a tool. One of the tools that exists for this is the requisition worksheet. The requisition worksheet is an engine that calculates a plan based on existing conditions or static controls. What's on sales order? What's on hand? What are the rules associated with an item? What is the minimum, the maximum, the reorder quantity, the reorder multiple? You must order in quantities that are multiples of a dozen or multiples of 100 based on the minimum case, or that they won't break down a case of product at the supplier. After we run through the requisition worksheet, we will tell it to carry out the plan, which will automate the creation of purchase orders. eReceive is an engine that validates and matches what has been purchased when I receive goods against a purchase order. The system is designed to utilize barcode scanning hardware when receiving product. The scanning function will automatically find a purchase order or even add or create one if products being received in that is not on an outstanding purchase order, customer return order, or transfer order that's coming in from overseas. eReceive is a very popular enhancement that automates the receiving function against a purchase order. Advanced forecasting and procurement takes the requisition system to the next level. I had said that the requisition system uses static controls. It utilizes the min, the max, the reorder point that we set up on each item or on each stock keeping unit card. Advanced forecasting and procurement will consider usage for items, collaborative data from customers, customer-specific history. This data is used to consider what should be our forecast usage for an item for the next several periods by taking all of the historical usage and testing it with a series of formulas, reforecasting the recent history to determine which formula best fits the usage trend for this product, and uses that number to generate a forecast horizon and quantity and a suggested order. All this takes place while also considering targets for a PO, vendor dollar value targets, container size targets for containerization and optimal loading of a container. Very powerful functions. The eReceive engine, the requisition engine, the advanced forecasting and procurement utility. More information can be found on all of these topics in other Dynamics NAV training sessions. The purchase order entry tool is very flexible and packed with many features. We've touched the surface of some of those in this session, and I hope you found it informative. Thank you and have a great day.